Welcome to episode number 158, Reviving Dead Prospects.
This ought to be interesting.
Right, exactly. I promise it won't be that gross. It'll be actually useful.
Good.
So this episode is being brought to you by our marketing lab, Aviation Sales and Marketing Lab, which is an appropriate thing if we're mad scientists raising prospects from the dead, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. In our marketing lab, actually, it's an opportunity to work with other people who are encountering some of the same challenges that you are. And we talk with one another about some of the things that happen and how we can get past some of the challenges and obstacles involved with sales and marketing in the aviation industry, because we are all in the same boat, right?
One would hope.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about dead prospects, right? Now, this is a person that you have tried to make a sale to, and for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. But I think there are really three types of dead, if we were to categorize the types.
Yeah, I thought dead was dead.
No. It's not. Actually, the first is the most common, and that is given up for dead.
Well, yeah, that's not a good thing.
Number two is mostly dead.
Okay.
And the third is actually dead. So just to put a little context around this, the given up for dead, we were watching on Netflix the other night, the old Western Hang 'em High with Clint Eastwood, right? Mm-hmm. And they left him for dead. It's kind of the premise of the movie, and he's going around finding out who these people were and exacting revenge on these people for leaving him for dead. And I think that happens a lot in our industry, that we give up on people way too soon.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to talk about how to recognize the symptoms of not quite dead and things like that. The second thing is he's not dead, he's only mostly dead. If you saw the movie Princess Bride, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is Miracle Max talking about Wesley, who is mostly dead, and how to revive that kind of person. And then the third one is actually dead. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there is a point at which we give up on people and move on, right? Okay.
Yep.
So first of all, let's talk about left for dead. I think a lot of salespeople will leave prospects for dead way too soon.
Absolutely.
And so the first thing to really know is that prospects are a lot tougher than you think. They will tell you that they're not interested as a defense mechanism, because we've all been dealing with pushy salespeople our whole lives. And the first thing you say when you walk into a store and someone says, can I help you, is,
no,
I'm just looking. Exactly. I'm not really interested right now. I'm just doing research. Is to deflect the salesperson and say, I'm not interested. I don't have the money. I'm just here for some other reason. I'm just waiting for someone. Make up some reason that they're in the store.
And then the first thing they do is, if they listen to you, is they give up.
Mm-hmm.
When you're browsing around and you decide on something you want to buy, you can't find anybody.
Right. So what you do in those kinds of situations is you ask permission to follow up and say, great, well, I'll check back with you in a few minutes if that's all right. Mm-hmm. And of course they will say, sure. And in our industry, and especially online, we just ask them for permission to send them periodic updates about the topic. So if they're inquiring about aircraft on the market or whatever, okay, great. Do you mind if we send you some information once a month or once a quarter about the airplanes that are on the market and, what's changing in the market, that kind of thing?
Exactly.
And almost always they will say, sure. Mm-hmm. So all you're doing is taking the pressure off.
Right.
Right? So you're not leaving them for dead. Right?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
They become not now.
Right. There's a quote by Mark Twain that says, reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. And I think this happens an awful lot, that salespeople will assume that a prospect is dead long before that's actually appropriate.
Yes.
These are some statistics from the industry.
I was hoping you'd have this slide.
Exactly. This is one that's been making the rounds, and it's actually talking about retail. It's the National Sales Association statistics. So this is not about aviation in particular, I think aviation is actually worse because there are a lot of folks that will take 20 or more contacts. There are people that we've been in contact with for years before they do business with us, and that is not unusual.
In fact, the longest one to date was like 8 years, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Jeez.
So if you're just listening to this and not seeing the slides, 48% of people never follow up with a prospect. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. 12% of salespeople only make 3 contacts and stop. Only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. And then there's several more statistics on that.
Then the rest of the statistics, you have to understand what's bad about what she just told you.
Right. 2% of sales are made on the first contact. Those are the people that would buy no matter what, right?
Yeah.
3% are made on the second, 5% on the third or more, 10 on the fourth contact, and 80% of sales are made on the 12th or more contact, and I would actually say 20th contact in the aviation industry because we have a longer sales cycle than retail.
Yeah, and you have to realize that when it's contact, that could mean anything from an email, a phone call, pass them at NBAA and say hi.
Right.
I mean, anything, but it takes that many to actually nail it down.
And I know you're saying, I'm not going to call somebody every day or every week.
And we're not saying to do that.
We'll talk about that in just a minute.
That's right.
But just to put this in graphic form, how long does this take, right? Most salespeople give up after the second or third try, and most of those sales are actually made far beyond that. So, you're really giving up on 80% of the sales that you could possibly make if you give up too soon. And we are not talking about calling them every day.
No, heavens, not even every week.
Right. So, when do you give up on somebody? You keep marketing till they buy or till they die, right? According to Dan Kennedy, who is...
and actually, well, he ought to know.
He ought to know. Right, he's been in the business a really long time, and he definitely ought to know. So if you're not calling them every day or every week, what are you doing?
Holding pattern, of course.
You're doing a holding pattern, exactly. So just like when you arrive at an airport and there are no spaces for you to land in, the ATC will send you over to a holding pattern. And if you're in instruments...
In fact, in Salt Lake, they even have a VFR holding
exactly.
approaching VFR traffic, for crying out loud.
Exactly. So what a holding pattern means in marketing is somebody is not ready to buy yet. You really do need to have a series of activities that you can provide for that person that are low-key, low-risk, low-cost to you, low-cost to them, where you are sending them a newsletter, you're following up with them at shows once a year, you're calling them once a quarter, you're sending them a birthday card, you're sending them a Christmas card, you're sending them another newsletter, those kinds of things. So this podcast is an example of a holding pattern activity. There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast who are not ready yet to be working with us.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine because that's the way people work in this industry. It takes a long time to get from idea to ready to
and some of them may be
relationship.
ready intellectually, but not financially, or vice versa.
Or vice versa. Exactly. So, what you're doing with that holding pattern is, number one, you are taking up time while circumstances change. So maybe they're not in a position to buy right now, or they're not in a situation to buy right now, but will be in the future. Or it could be that they don't have enough information yet to make the purchase. So that holding pattern is designed to fill in those missing pieces of information, build credibility, fill in those gaps, and make them ready, right?
Right.
Okay. So, 3 types of dead, right? The second type is the mostly dead.
Mostly.
Okay. So this would be somebody who is not qualified, maybe not ready, not just not ready, but not qualified.
Yeah, they may be financially okay and maybe intellectually for it, but they don't have a need.
Right. Or they're in a position in their company that is not the right position to be pulling the trigger for you. So, you may be selling too far down the organizational chart, which sometimes happens, and you've got somebody who is a chief pilot or a DOM or a maintenance person or something like that really loves your product or service, but they can't convince their boss to make the purchase. So, mostly dead person or mostly dead prospect.
Not a person.
Not a person, right. Not in a position to buy at the moment, which is fine.
Yep.
If you have seen the movie, The Princess Bride, right? When he was mostly dead, what did they do, right? His friends carried him around for a while through the rest of the movie until he was in a position to make a difference. And if you remember this, drop your sword, right? He says to the six-fingered man as he saves the day after being mostly dead for a good part of the movie.
Picture, right?
Okay. So those mostly dead people, you never want to give up on them. You want to be like their buddies that carry them around halfway through the movie, and you do that by using your holding pattern, right?
That's right.
And the reason you do that is because their circumstances will change. Just like in the movie, people who are not qualified will become so.
Yeah.
And will become some of your best customers as well.
Sure. You just want to be in the background, say, we're here when you're ready.
Right. And you carry them along in the sense that you keep giving them information. You keep giving them help when you can. When an opportunity arises, when you can help them with something, you do it. So you're just like Inigo Montoya and whatever the big guy's name was in the movie. I don't remember.
No, I don't remember either.
Yeah, but the actor was Andre the Giant, but I don't remember what his character's name was. Anyway, somebody knows. I'm sure they'll put it in the comments for this. Okay, so last type of dead is...
Dead.
actually dead, right? Okay, so how do you know if somebody is actually dead?
I'm quite sure you're going to explain.
Okay, if a prospect is actually dead. If they have opted out from your list...
Yeah, that'd be a good sign.
Then you absolutely honor that request.
That's right.
And there are laws, in fact...
that require you to.
That require you to. So the GDPR in Europe...
Yep.
requires that it's called the right to be forgotten. So if you're marketing to someone and they request that you remove them from your list, you absolutely have to do that. Same thing with the Canadian Cam Spam Act. You solicit someone who has asked you not to, you could be in a lot of trouble.
Financially.
Yeah, exactly. Legally. And then financially.
Right.
So if someone asks you to remove them from your list, or if they ask you just plain and simple, tell you, you know what, I really want you to stop sending me newsletters or whatever, then don't waste your breath.
Exactly.
Okay. Second thing is if they are literally out of business.
True.
Okay. If you get mail back from them and there's no forwarding address, those kinds of things, that's a pretty good indication. If everybody from that company has left the industry, in some cases, even if they literally go out of business, somebody from that industry is going to start a spinoff. So you might want to chase that down. But if everyone has left the industry, then, of course, there's not much else you can do.
Right.
Or if someone is actually dead and had no succession plan. So there's a lot of family businesses in the aviation industry and a lot of sole proprietorships.
Yep.
So, those are people that you would take off your list and not pursue anymore. So just wanted to go through this with folks because a lot of times people give up way too soon.
Yes, they do.
And, say that a prospect didn't work out or a sales situation didn't work out way before it was time to actually call a prospect a dead opportunity, right?
So is this the sales guy supposed to be making these contacts, or is this the marketing group supposed to be making these contacts?
Both. So, if you're in marketing, that's a good question. If you're in marketing, do you ever take people off the list or do you keep them in the holding pattern? And the holding pattern is usually something, if you've got, for small companies, you're wearing the same, you've got one guy wearing all these hats. So the same person is doing the sales and the marketing and everything else. But if you're in a company that has multiple hats, then the way a marketing person would view this is, in terms of the people that you're targeting, and in terms of the people that you keep on your holding pattern, and that kind of thing. If you're a salesperson, then it goes into your daily call list or your people to bother at a show list, and so on. Your top 10 or whatever number it is that you're managing in your sales portfolio, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the most common thing, the most common type of dead is given up for dead and given up way too soon. Second most common is mostly dead, meaning not qualified, but will be or could be given time, energy, help, assistance.
And the third one is so rare.
And the third one is so rare as to, I would say it's less than 10% of dead prospects are actually disqualified completely and completely out of the picture, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if you follow the Perry Marshall 80-20 rule, 80% of the contacts that you probably have listed as dead are really not. And this time of year, it's actually December that we're recording this, we are going back through the people that we contacted during the year, and there's a stage in our sales process where we send people a blue folder, and if you're in our sales process, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a beautiful blue folder with our logo on it and a lot of materials in it, and we flag those in our CRM as how many blue folders did we send out in 2018, and of those, where are all of them now? The where are they now episode, right?
Exactly.
And John and I meet on Mondays, and we go through that, and on our agenda for Monday's meeting is the Where Are They Now episode of the 2018 blue folders.
Exactly.
And we'll talk about each of those people, what happened with them, and which variety of dead are they if we haven't made a sale to them yet, right? And I would guess that 80% of them are in one of those first two categories, and we leave them
very,
in a holding
very
pattern.
few a third.
Absolutely. Right. So if you would like to talk about this some more, talk about your sales process, talk about your marketing process, talk about how to build a good holding pattern, any of those things, we'd be happy to help you with that. Our marketing lab is a great resource for that. That's the least expensive way to get some good consulting and some good sales accountability and coaching and things like that. It's very, very specific to the aviation industry. So you're not going to be talking to real estate people, and you're not going to be talking to car salespeople and things like that.
Some of these people may have done that in the past, but they currently are not doing that.
Right. These are people that actually understand the industry and how it works and are coming from different parts of the industry. So we'd love to have you join us in our marketing lab and make 2019 a much better year for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. If you'd like a consultation about any specific problem or question that this spurred for you, we'd be happy to spend 30 minutes with you. Just go to our website and click the gold button that says Contact Us. And you can set an appointment on our calendar for any time that is convenient for both of us, and we'll sit down and talk about what you have in mind.
Of course.
Right? Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great day.